So, important thing is my intent. My intent is just to educate you. It's really to inspire you to do more research, just give you an opportunity to see a different side of the story. I'm not a purist by any stretch of the imagination. It's not like I won't touch a GMO food or anything. But I think we have to all agree in the last 20 years, if you're over 30 years old, we have seen the amount of kids with allergies, people with cancer. I remember when I was a kid, cancer was like something people got once in a while, and it was this really awful thing, but it wasn't happening like to everyone. And now it's like I feel like everyone's got cancer. Allergies, crying out loud. I lived off peanut butter and jelly. Now I can't even bring a peanut in the schoolroom. It's like they're sensitive to the smell of it. We have more infertility than we've ever had. Infertility clinics are a dime a dozen. I have several friends. I mean, I could think of 5 off the top of my head that have had to go to fertility clinics where that was really, before it used to just happen, oopsie, bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease. This was all something that happened to people, but myself, I suffer very, very hard from irritable bowel syndrome, which just means I don't know what the hell's wrong with your stomach, but something's wrong, it's irritated. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I got into this mainly because of my own questions, So let me move to the next slide. Honey, I moved this one, but it didn't work.
Click on it.
Okay. Now what? He says I break everything, but I swear. Okay, number 2. So just to remember that, food is not just calories, it's information. It truly is. It talks to your DNA. It tells it what to do. The most powerful tool to change your health is the environment and your fork. It's really, truly important what you're putting in your body. You are what you eat. I want to just go over the definition of organic versus conventional. And, I didn't know what conventional meant a few years ago. So don't feel badly if you don't know. Most people don't. I went to Whole Foods. I was like, what the hell's conventional mean? But it just means regular, whatever. It's not organic, but it's regular. But this is why I'm so passionate, because people are busy. We have jobs, other jobs. And I just felt like you guys need to understand this more. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're not going to go into super, super detail, but this is the tip of the iceberg. First of all, if it's organic, it means that it's not genetically modified. So that's one thing you should know. It's just not allowed. The pesticide exposure in organic produce must be grown without any synthetic pesticides. The residue level can't be higher than 5%. They still use pesticides, just not in such a high amount. Use of synthetic fertilizers is not allowed in organic foods. So petroleum-based fertilizers or sewage sludge-based fertilizers are not allowed in organic crops. The use of synthetic growth hormones in livestock. If it's organic, the livestock can't be given growth hormones, but if it's conventional, they're almost always given growth hormones. So that's important for you to know. The use of antibiotics in livestock, if it's organic, they can't be given antibiotics on a regular basis. The conventional ones are. They're just given antibiotics before they're sick. It's just a series that they do. Livestock care, if it's organic, the livestock must have access to the outdoors. And the majority of livestock, if it's not organic, they do suffer in factory farms. That's the majority. You can watch the movie Food Inc., and I'm going to show you again our website that has all these movies. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's all free. Joel's done an amazing job. Thank you, honey. The allowance of food irradiation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but there was a lot of info kind of on an expose on food irradiation. Food irradiation means microwaved at high intensities. So that basically whatever that food was, it's usually done to meat, it's basically microwaved to a high level. So all the nutrients are killed, but also anything that would hurt us it's sterilized. That's the way I should put it. Now, food that's irradiated, they did this expose, and I know they were on the nth degree of it, but they had actually put feces in the hamburger, and someone could eat it because it was irradiated, and that's I'm sure an extreme thing, but the point is they could put anything in this considered meat, and it would be safe, but there was no nutrients in it. And I think we need to really remember that the microwave really does kill the nutrients. It kills micronutrients that we don't even know exist yet. That's important. So if it's organic, it cannot be irradiated. The use of preservatives and flavor enhancers. Organic products can't contain preservatives or flavor enhancing chemicals. Non-organic products can contain yeast. Doesn't mean they all do, but they can. Heavy metals and contaminants. Organic products can't contain traces of heavy metals or other contaminants that exceed the FDA approval levels. They all have a certain amount, because sometimes, just putting things in pans and soaking them can actually leach out some of the metals. So there's going to be some metals, but the organic ones have a certain amount that they're allowed in, and the non-organics don't have any amount that they are not allowed. And as I mentioned, organic foods don't allow modifications. Now, are GMOs bad? Are genetically modified organisms bad? Some say there's no scientific proof. Others say it can wipe out all natural food sources. My most basic question to you is, why are there no labels needed on this GMO food? Why is that there are no labels saying that this is genetically modified? They've been doing this since the 90s, and we have not known about this. That is a big question. The FDA says there's nothing significantly different between this food and like modified corn and regular corn. Yet on all of the package of the seeds, of the corn, of the soy, of everything we're going to go over, it has patents on every single seed. Patents from the companies, mostly Monsanto, that make them. How is it that you can get a patent on something and then say they're not any different? It doesn't make any sense. Why is that? They've actually added a category of patents: composition of matter, pharmaceuticals, chemical compounds, and artificial genetic creations. So I just want to ask that question. It's important. The labels, these are just labels of, as you can see, of Monsanto. This is this is the one for cotton. It says seeds treated with poison, do not use for food, feed, or oil purposes. This astonishes me. There's actual, it's so poisonous, it has to say caution. The seed is treated with poison. Do not use for food, feed, or oil. External, if you touch it, you have to wash your skin with soap and water. You have to flush out your eyes. This is the stuff that's on the back of these genetically modified seed packs. This is alarming to me. And why we're not able to be told that this is genetically modified, that's just bananas. We're going to go over Roundup resistant and Roundup ready, but you should know Roundup is actually a pesticide. It's the big one that everybody uses. This is another just back of the package. Just keep out of reach of children. This seed is not used for food. Well, it's just amazing. They've had so many incidents where cattle or different animals have eaten these seeds and they die, but yet it's okay for us, they say, and they say it's no different. You should know that Monsanto's motto, at least we are under the impression, that no food shall be grown that we don't own. All of these patents are there for a reason, because they have to buy these seeds. In fact, there's contracts put in place for these farmers. It's truly an astonishing business on a business scale. But we'll get back to that. I'd like you to know that 88% of the corn grown in the U.S. is all GMO. 94% of the soy in the U.S. is GMO. The cotton and canola is also highly GMO, and sugar beets, and alfalfa is a new one that they just allowed as well. But soy and corn are a big one, because that's really the two basic ones that we use the most of. It's kind of the ones where my head goes up, my alarms go off. Frito-Lay, who makes Doritos and all the corn chips and stuff, they've been asked, why can't you give us a non-GMO source? And their answer is there is not enough on earth to supply us. There would be like a Frito-Lay corn chip shortage. So it's just an important thing to know. So how are GMOs made? In the most simplistic form, it's that you create a GMO, you take a gene from one species, and you forcibly insert it to the DNA of another species. Now, this is an actual gun. That's the prototype that they actually use. Now, they put this toxin, it's called BT toxin. I'll go over it in the next slide. But they put this toxin in the gun, and they shoot it into a plate of the millions of corn cells. So it's like an explosion. It's not a high scientific concoction where you're imagining chemists having their hats on and their little test tubes. It's an explosion at high force. They put a toxin in a gun and they slam it against the cells of corn, and then voila, they have these new corn cells, and this DNA has popped into place. It's not scientific in a sense of replicatable the same every time. And we believe, or many people believe, that that's why some GMO corn has such a nasty effect on some of the cattle, at least, that we know are eating it in high forms, and then some does not, So it's not a very highly scientific process, which is very scary to me because it's just kind of, boom, here you go. You should know what the BT is. I can't pronounce this. I'm going to slaughter it, but Bacillus thuringiensis is the best I can do, but we call it BT for short. It's a bacteria in the soil that produces a toxin, and it's supposedly specifically against certain insects. Basically, it's a poison that the insects can't tolerate, or it kills the insects that bite the corn. Now, this is actually a slide from someone promoting using the BT corn. Okay, so this is not against it, this is for it, and I wanted to put it in here so you could see. The next bullet is research in genetic engineering has allowed for the incorporation of the toxin producing genes into cotton and corn plants, making them resistant to some important pests. So again, in plain English, that means that the pests are getting sick or dying when they eat this corn or cotton. And the last bullet, I think, is the most important. It says the modern invention has cut down on the use of dangerous pesticides in some parts of the world. Now, that's a very misleading statement, because what we found is after harvesting in following seasons, the corn and the cotton need more pesticides because it becomes more resistant, and there's some adaptation to these pests. So that's one of the things that kind of bugs me the most, is it's so misleading. How does the BT work? It works because it's inserting a gene from that BT, and it allows the plant itself to produce cry, which is a protein, and it's a poisonous protein to these pests. When ingested by the insect, its own digestive enzymes activate the toxic to form a crystal protein, and basically the bug, either the stomach blows up or it starves to death. Now, there's so many people out there that are going to say it's fine, and I understand that they're trying to sell you this corn, but how that can be fine, it just does not make any common sense. They can scientifically try to walk their way around it with their lingo, but truly this is killing bugs, and bugs are not we're not insects, yes, but there are damaging effects to the body, when you're eating something that that's going to hurt bugs like that. Soybeans are Roundup ready as well. This is something that is commercialized in 1996. As I mentioned, alfalfa, corn, cotton, spring oil, sugar beets, winter canola came next. Basically the same sort of idea on this one, engineering it with that BT. So the body was made to tolerate and eliminate some toxins. There's no doubt about it. But the reason so many of us are passionate about this 9-day detox group and just doing nutritional cleansing is because we're not made to tolerate so many toxins, and we're really being bombarded to it. I also want to mention that there's changes to the soil. It's unforeseen. It's unforeseen that genetically modified organisms have changed our soil because there's so much herbicide in them. It changes the fungus, and the fungus itself is more toxic. You constantly have large companies that will use science and modify a study to produce their desired results. And I learned as an exercise science major that any study can be altered to produce the desired results, and you just can't deny that so many of the intestinal issues and so many issues have been almost mimicking the same timeline as these toxins were introduced in the 90s. As I mentioned, the soil is being changed, and the thing about pesticides, pesticide, suicide, herbicide, all of it's death, homicide. Once they introduced Roundup, which was what they introduced as their first pesticide in the 50s, the scientists started taking measurements of vitamin and iron content and whatever they knew at the time in the 50s. Now we also have the vitamin and iron content now, and that's from the 1998, quite a few years ago, but you can see that one apple in the 1950s had approximately 4.3 milligrams of iron. In 1998, it's down to 0.18 milligrams of iron per apple. So in essence, in order to get the same amount of iron in the 1998, you'd have to eat how many apples? 20-something apples. Same sort of thing for the spinach. Again, they started doing these studies because they were introducing pesticides, and they just didn't know what would happen. Well, now we know that our food is a lot more nutrient deficient, which is, again, why we do our nutritional cleansing and superfoods. Food is just losing its nutrient value. As I mentioned, in the 50s, you know, that's when they started doing their testing. But the amount of vitamin C, the amount of iron, the hybrids, the calcium, all of it is lowered as far as we know. Maybe not all to that degree, but there's some significance. So when we were talking about GMOs, we have to talk about Monsanto. There are definitely other companies, and they're trying to pick out one company. I'm certainly not trying to stand up against anyone necessarily. I just want to get people educated. But we are bypassing billions of years of evolution and doing it in the minds of scientists, you know. Monsanto is the largest GMO producer. It promised to use less pesticides every year, yet due to the GMOs needing more pesticide because they're Roundup resistant, they've actually had to give more pesticides. Now, another interesting note, I hope I'm not digressing, but while they said they were going to use less pesticides, they were actually building more factories to make more pesticides. So it seems like they could have known that this was going to happen. And it turns out, because there's so much Roundup being used, there's a lot of Roundup in our diet, which is definitely not good. And it's important that people understand that Monsanto had been banned. I know they're overturning a few countries here and there, but they have been banned by many countries. And not only is it not banned here, we don't even have any labels saying what it is when it's genetically modified. A side note, I don't want to get into deeply. You have to really watch a movie to get the full grasp of this, but farmers are being sued for having GMO on the property, and that's through like some cross-contamination. Maybe they don't want GMOs, they don't want to buy from this place, but yet, of course, farmlands are always close together, so the winds pollinate, you know. So honestly, even if they didn't want to do GMOs and there was two cornfields next to each other, that GMO corn can pollinate with the non-GMO corn, and then they have GMO corn. Then the companies, and I'm not saying this happens every day, but it has happened, that they actually sue the farmer for having the GMO corn on their property, obviously trying to strong-arm them into purchasing their seeds next. So this is a real much bigger deal than I think most of us really understood. I talked about that. This is important. The FDA was implemented to protect us, but now has more pharmaceutical ties than any food involvement as far as I'm concerned. And this just is not debatable information. This information I want to give you isn't up for debate. It's very well documented. FDA scientists warned repeatedly against genetic technology on food, and they said it was dangerous. They said it could create allergy in livestock, some new disease and nutritional problems. But the FDA denied the existence of those concerns, even though it was the consensus of their own scientists, which found out from all the documents that was made public because of the lawsuit. When the American Academy of Environmental Medicine evaluated animal feeding studies, the peer-reviewed public studies on GMOs, they found that animals that were fed GMOs compared to the control group suffered from gastrointestinal problems, they suffered from infertility, from reproductive disorders, they suffered from all sorts of immune system reactions, accelerated aging, etc., etc. This is not debatable information. This part really frustrates me. I find this to be probably one of the most frustrating parts because it's so public, and yet it's so against any common sense. There's countless Monsanto reps that are now on the FDA board. Our FDA, that's supposed to protect us. Michael Taylor will be the one you talk most about because he was once Monsanto's vice president, also once their attorney, and now he acts as what we call the food czar, or the deputy commissioner of foods in the FDA. So he's got a very convenient out where he can't discuss anything that has happened because he was their lawyer. So I find that to be very frustrating. I want to show you just a few overlaps. The biotech industry, going from Thomas being the Secretary of Agriculture, as we talked about Michael Taylor, Roger Becky, he was the director in Monsanto. Now he's the USDA NIFA, and from Obama did, I'm not trying to get political, but it just happened to be those slides showed who put in power. But you can see there's a lot of overlap. People that have worked at Monsanto at very high levels are now working in our agriculture department, in our FDA branch. It's insidious. And that to me is very, very sad. I also am very internet savvy because of my gorgeous husband, and something that I want to really point out is that you can find information supporting either side of anything on the internet. That doesn't mean both sides are true, by the way. That just means that both sides are either working hard or one of them is working hard at getting their information to the top of your first or second Google page. It doesn't mean the stuff is actually the truth. But usually there's some sort of debunking going on. When I was trying to find their explanation for all this overlap, the only thing I could find to debunk this overlap in federal government and our agriculture department hiring people that are at high levels at Monsanto, which is like the most poisonous company that we have in the world. All they said was, it shouldn't matter what your past job was once you're in public office. Now that frustrates me because it should matter, and it does matter. You know, if you were someone that was completely working to just derive chemicals, and now you're working to be in charge of our health, this is very important stuff. So that's frustrating to me. This is important for you. You just want to know, what are the most common GMO foods? So the 5 that I talked about: corn, canola, soy, cotton, and sugar. Also papaya from Hawaii is mostly GMO. There's a little bit of yellow squash, a little bit of zucchini, but I don't worry myself too much with that. I kind of just stay with the whole corn, canola, and soy, because those are our biggest ones. This is an important point. Yes, the USDA has organic, but the saddest part about this is I don't mind people making money. I like money. I think money is an important part of life, but it's like business on both ends, you know. A farmer can spray chemicals to kill bugs and spray more chemicals to kill weeds, and it can plant seeds that produce chemicals, and they don't need any labels or licensing to do that. But if a farmer wants to use the USDA organic label, they have to pay a whole bunch of money and fill out a hell of a lot of paperwork in order to prove they didn't use chemicals. That just seems really backwards, doesn't it? Isn't that kind of a backwards? I mean, it seems like that's not right, I think. How to find non-GMO foods. Most importantly, you can look for non-GMO Project Verified. Now, this is a really cool project because it's actually a voluntary thing. It's a nonprofit. They have, they went up 200% in the past 10 years. It's fabulous because people actually companies know that it's starting to become very important. It's just very important to see that it's non-GMO because people are starting to get concerned, so it's starting to make some money. So the companies are actually volunteering and putting their own application and getting non-GMO verified, which is fabulous. So look for that label. Look for USDA Organic. We talked about that. Also, you can go on your iPhone with the new app, Shop GMO. That's going to be awesome. And then non-GMOshoppingguide.com is amazing. And then eating farm fresh. Most of the GMO scale farms, it's not in your backyard, so that's going to really save you. And I'm going to tell you guys, we're going to have to cut this short because I think I did way too long. So I'll go another like 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll do a part 2. How about that? Because I know your time is valuable as well. Remember that you vote with your dollars, okay? Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for what kind of world you want to live in. I believe in the goodness of the human race. I believe that if we're educated, if we know better, that we can better. And you are voting with your dollars all the time because I know companies they need the bottom line, but if people are going towards non-GMO stuff, they're going to find a way to be. They are. So just remember, you're voting with your dollars. And just that why, again, the GMO-resistant weeds were entered in 1990. Well, in 1997, mandatory labels in Europe, just on all GMO foods, even for the animal feed. Why? Why was it not labeled here? I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the FDA was overlapped. I'm not a brilliant woman, but I feel like I can obtain some simple deductions, you know. Going into soy really quickly, why is soy not a health food? This is really an important subject because, again, it's one of these things that I feel like we're really misinformed on. And let me just see, people in the 90s when soy was all the rage. I was personal training them. And the thing I noticed that got my antennas up was that the people that I trained that ate soy as their main staple, was healthier and they're trying to be vegetarian or whatever, they did not do as well on my program. They took a cut. They were a little bit more swollen. They just never got where I thought they should get. Since nutritional cleansing, by the way, I've decided that's truly much easier to training, but the soy was a big thing. I could really tell the difference. So I got to studying it and researching it. And, you know, vegetarianism was a big deal. In the 90s, it really peaked, and soy emerged as this perfect food, and they claim that they could have the ideal source of protein and lower cholesterol and protect against cancer and heart disease. But how did such a healthy food emerge from a product that in 1913 was listed as the Department of Agriculture handbook, but as an industrial product? Soy is cheap, okay? That's really where it comes down to, is soy is a cheap way to make the nitrogen in the soil, so they would turn over the crops. They would use soy to get nitrogen back into the soil so it would be better for planting. And then they had a lot of oil residue, and they needed to do something with it. In test animals, soy-containing trypsin inhibitors cause stunted growth. A lot of what we're talking about is phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are like estrogen. We all are familiar with the term estrogen. Estrogen is a fat-storing hormone. Phytoestrogen also endocrine function. They do have the potential to cause infertility, to promote breast cancer in adults. Soy phytoestrogens are potent anti-thyroid agents. So there's a lot of stuff with phytoestrogens that are just no good. But I don't want to give soy a total bad rap. Fermented soy is very good. We just don't eat a lot of it. Tempeh is similar but not the same as tofu. That's a fermented soy. Soy sauce is fermented by sodium, but it's still fermented. Fermented bean paste, natto, which I've never had, miso is also fermented. And I think you'll see these are pretty big in the Japanese and Asian cultures, and there's probably some contribution. I'm certainly not saying I did a study on this, but I've noticed that a lot of these Asian cultures that surround themselves with fermented soy and vegetables do live longer and healthier. So there's probably some good connection there, which fermented soy is, not all soy is bad. The soy we want to stay away from is not soy in high quantities. In small quantities, not a big deal. But the ones that we kind of want to limit, tofu, bean curd, all soy milks. One of my biggest issues is this soy infant formula. This bugs the crap out of me because not only is soy got a lot of estrogen, also 94% is genetically modified with these toxins, and we're giving it to our babies. All of these substitutes that the powders that you give the kids instead of breastfeeding, almost all of them are soy, and almost all of them are genetically modified. And that is just awful. I mean, that's just inconceivable. Soy protein powders. A lot of people go soy because they're trying to be good, and that's another thing that bugs me is they're trying to be good, you know. Soy meat alternatives like soy sausages, veggie burgers, they're all made from hydrolyzed soy protein. The phytic acid, in moderation, that can be good, but soy has too much. It's just too much. When you're drinking a glass of soy, 240 grams, it's just too much. So a little is good, too much is bad. It can promote kidney stones, weaken the immune system. It also can contribute to food allergies, which I've seen go up. Just a little bit about the soys. I just want to touch upon this. Certain plants have special toxins that are linked to several health problems. There's a few examples. The ones that I just kind of want to touch upon is enzyme inhibitors. They hinder the protein digestion. Phytoestrogens we've talked about. The phytates, they prevent you from absorbing minerals. They call them anti-nutrients because they prevent you from absorbing the minerals. 93% of the soy is modified. That's pretty significant. They've discovered that the beta toxin inside the soy is supposed to repel bugs. Well, it does repel bugs, but it accumulates inside your gut, slowly leaching toxic pesticides into your gut. Now, I don't want to get into gut permeability. But this, if you watch a movie that I suggest at the end of this, at some point this week, it'll go into detail. But leaky gut syndrome is a real thing. It's a thing I think most of you have heard about, and there does seem to be there could be a very big correlation between that and these genetically modified foods. One thing that really upsets me is infants on soy formula receive the equivalent of 5 birth control pills a day. That's those phytoestrogens we were talking about. So that's just that's rock solid terrible. One thing you'll hear a lot of GMO proponents saying why the GMOs are so good is they say it's the recipe for global famine. We would all die and be starving without it. And that troubles me because there's no scientific proof that is true, first of all. Second of all, the patented seed is terrible for global food sourcing because they're denied their traditional right to save seeds and use different seeds the next year, soil infertility, all of that. All of those chemicals that are in the seeds, it has there's buildup of these chemicals, and it sterilizes a lot of soil, which it has a problem with that. Monocropping, if you're not familiar with this is an interesting. For example, there used to be like hundreds and hundreds of different strains of rice. Now there's like that are major, and monocropping is like why the Irish potato famine was a result of that, because they only took one type of potato where there's like hundreds and hundreds, but one type. Sounds to me like it's inbreeding as far as if we're trying to get really simplistic with our terminology. The Terminator seed technology, it's genetically switched to switch off the plant's ability to germinate, to redo a second time. And just dependency on the centralized food system. Small farms won't go down like one big farm, So that's just not a good rap to say that it's going to help end world hunger. World hunger is an issue because of the governments and all the money. It's not that there isn't enough food most of the time. The majority of the time, they charge too much for it wherever you are, and the governments aren't getting it to the people. So it's a real big distinction. It's a big thing to say, and I just want to make sure we're aware of that. I wanted to show you this really quick. Thankfully, my husband can read French, but this is 497 days, the first little mouse with that big lump on the side, 97 days of 11% GMO corn, Roundup. Obviously, this big tumor happened. This next mouse, different mouse, after 546 days, this was with the same diet, and sorry, the first one was no Roundup. The second one was with Roundup, and of course it has a few different problems, but definitely something else. And the third one was no Roundup, no corn, but the 0.5% Roundup in the water. So it was actually the chemicals from the Roundup in the water. And as you can see, after 577 days, it had quite a few tumors. These are real rat problems, but they, FDA holds steadfast that we just don't have any issue. I want you to know that there's lots of studies like this, but very hard to find. Why is that? Because basically these people fund our colleges. The pharmaceutical companies fund our colleges. These Monsanto and other big companies that are promoting the GMOs are funding our colleges. So the people, professors, scientists, not only do they not have the money to do the research they want, because why would they give them money to research things like this? That would make them not make money, right? But the scientists are definitely being blackballed. That's something that is talked about in a few of the movies and a few of the independent films. So you won't see a lot of research like this because people end up getting in big trouble and making their life hell. So it's a big deal. Oh, I might be able to get through it. Listen, if you need to go, I totally understand, but I think I can get through this in 10 minutes. Sometimes it's with the slides, but I think I can get through it. So this is my truism. Again, the reason I'm so interested, it was all personal to begin with. I was doing my own focus study working at the Friendly's ice cream shop when I was a teenager. I noticed that people that drank Diet Coke were always significantly overweight. People that drank Diet Coke were normal weight or regular weight. And if people constantly have that, if I tell people that, they always have that constant rebuttal, like, no, well, they order French fries and ice cream with it, and that's why. But that's not why, because everybody orders the French fries and ice cream at Friendly's rather than drinking regular Coke or Diet Coke. So I started to get kind of, again, my antennas went up. I was like, what is with this? This Diet Coke isn't working, right? I was a big proponent. I was drinking it all. That was what I came from. Came from the margarine, era. Don't eat fat, eat margarine, can't believe it's not butter. And let me tell you, I can't believe, because I love butter. And that ain't in the diet sodas. I was living off all of that stuff. In fact, that's what they were teaching me in school. In fact, they were teaching me that in college later on too. Eat the diet stuff. And I came from this period in time. I want to just talk about the history again. This is not debatable. This part is not debatable. You can on a lot of things. You can't debate me on this. In spring of '67, just follow me here. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize it. There's no test. The Surly Company begins safety tests on aspartame that are necessary for applying for the FDA approval for food additives. A little later in '67, this doctor, a biochemist at University of Wisconsin, conducts aspartame safety tests on infant monkeys on behalf of the Surly Company. Of the 7 monkeys that were being fed aspartame milk, 1 dies, 5 others have grand mal seizures. This isn't debatable stuff. November 1970, this was just basically another low-calorie artificial sweetener, different brand name. It's pulled off the market because some scientists associate it with cancers. Questions are also raised about the only other artificial sweetener on the market, leaving the field wide open for this aspartame. All right. Now, my mother worked for Monsanto, by the way, in Western Mass, and there's a big Monsanto plant. I just want to digress a little bit and just say this place was like the epitome. That's the toxic billowing smoke, the crazy thing that you see whenever you see toxins and crazy music. That is where she worked. And we didn't live very close by. We're about 30 minutes away. But I know every time we go, like a 7-year-old, I couldn't even breathe. The air was so toxic. It was such a mean stench. And I just remember thinking, Mom, how can you work there? How do these people breathe that live here? This is awful. And that was, I was like 7 years old having these questions, And moving on, in 1980, the FDA Board of Inquiry comprised of 3 independent scientists confirmed it definitely induced brain tumors. In 1985, Monsanto purchased the Surly Company. That was the company that held the patent to aspartame, the active ingredient in Nutrasweet. Everybody knows this. The 60-minute special stated that the aspartame's approval was one of the most contested in FDA history. And I really feel like this is kind of when things went to the FDA, because I know that things were meant to be good. The FDA was meant to protect us, right? But this is frustrating because just let me give you an example of, if you're going to smoke now, if you're going to smoke cigarettes, it's bad for you. But this diet soda shit, this is like lies upon lies. Not only is it bad for you, could kill you, doesn't help you lose weight, but is marketed as a health food. Although cigarettes were too once upon a time. If you remember those old ads where most doctors smoke Camels and they help with digestion. So anyway, let's just agree to agree. The information we're getting from the media is not always correct. Aspartic acid. What is aspartame? Aspartic acid and phenylalanine. That's a methyl ester bond. You don't need to do this. You're not in chemistry class, but this is the part that's important. Methanol breaks down into formic acid and formaldehyde in your body. We're not rocket scientists. We're not chemists. But we all know formaldehyde is the embalming fluid for when you're dead. And that can't be good. That just can't be good. It was preserving your body. It's an actual neurotoxin. It's a neurotoxin. A neurotoxin masquerading as a food additive. This is what frustrates so much. It interacts with all antidepressants, Coumadin, hormones, insulin, all cardiac medications. Few over-the-counter drugs that cross blood-brain barrier. There's a certain permeability. But anyway, certain drugs do, such as alcohol, nicotine, diazepam. But we treat those things like drugs. But we don't treat diet soda like drugs or diet things like drugs. And this is my main issue, Splenda also has a chlorinated base like DDT. DDT is what they use, the Agent Orange. We all know this is bad. So that's what it is. The top 10 sources of aspartame, flavored water, even the ones that look healthy, you got to look. If it says sucralose on it, that's the aspartame type. Anything that doesn't have sugar in it, basically. If it has like 0 calories, it's not good. Sugar-free products, drink powders like the Crystal Lights, children's medicines, Nice. Give it to our babies. Yogurts, any of the diet yogurts, the light yogurts, anything that says light. All right, we already talked about formaldehyde, and I don't want to keep you all night. Yale University studies. This is always impressive. Yale's a nice place, right? I've heard about it. One of our Department of Molecular Cellular Developmental. Artificial sweeteners do not activate the food reward pathways in the brain. Functional MRIs have shown that the appetite suppression brought about by real sugar does not happen with artificial sweeteners, even if they contain calories. Therefore, there is nothing to tell your brain to stop eating, and you can remain hungry. And I attest to this. When I used to drink Diet Coke like it was going out of style, I ate so many carbs. I had carbohydrate cravings, and I know it has a bad effect on my health later on. Studies have shown that aspartame increases hunger more than glucose, that's regular sugar. Anything that tastes sweet enhances the appetite no matter what make of the food. So there's kind of a double whammy with the artificial sweeteners. Not only is your appetite increased as it is with sugar, but there's no signal telling you to stop eating. This is just, it's just like a double whammy. It doesn't help you lose weight. It doesn't help you, it can cause cancer, and yet it's touted as a health food. I want to talk about just the fat and how it's handled, whether it's stored and how it's stored. Fat metabolism is deranged by aspartame. It has an effect. It has an effect. I also want to just mention that the top-selling children's vitamins, again, getting to our kids, our babies that cannot handle this kind of stuff like the adults can. It's not good. It's not good. And the last thing I want to go over is very important. This is internet science, and I'm just going to read to you one of these studies and then read to you another study. And what I'm trying to convey to you here is that you can look on the internet and say, is aspartame bad for you? And you'll get these pop-ups that say, the first couple links on the first page will say, aspartame is healthy, aspartame helps you lose weight, or it's a myth, aspartame is safe. And then you'll see other links and they say other things. But let me just tell you these. I was doing a random Google search, and these are the two studies that I came across. Just take a deep breath and just listen. The American Cancer Society conducted an early 1980s study including 78,000 women who were highly homogeneous with regard to age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. That means they were about the same on most levels. They had lack of pre-existing conditions, and once their follow-up, a certain percentage that were using the artificial sweetener gained about 2 pounds. And I'm not going to go into the details, but this is a study that was with almost 80,000 people. It was a year, and it was, saccharin was used also associated with the 8-year study. And then they decided that they came out really not a big deal, only 2 pounds over. So the people only gained about 2 pounds. The next study was the easiest one to find, and you can listen to this one. Aspartame was associated with weight loss in 2 additional long-term studies. It investigated the low-calorie sweetener consumption patterns of 35 overweight individuals, 35 people, not 35,000. Before and after a 16-week weight loss program, 16 weeks. It just said it was a long-term study. This last one was 8 years. 16-week weight loss program. At the end of, and it says of overweight individuals, it doesn't tell us how overweight they are, but it says they were overweight. At the end of a 16-week period, women lost 15 pounds and men lost 20 pounds while consuming aspartame and saccharin. I'm not sure if I did a good job at that. I feel like I flubbed it, but what I was trying to convey is that there are scientific articles that are legitimate, and there are scientific articles that are rubbish. And a science major, you don't really know the difference. I'm sure you can tell the difference between these 2 studies. One was 16 weeks with overweight individuals, and the other one was 8 years with all the individuals in the same sort of socioeconomic status, the same everything. You know, that's a real science study. But this one is the one I could find easiest on the internet to be a myth buster of why aspartame is okay to eat and helps you lose weight. So it's not disturbing to everybody. It should be. What I want to convey is that you cannot trust a Facebook meme or a quick internet search for reliable information. When you want important questions answered about your health, you really have to align yourself with information from independent companies whose sole goal isn't just a profit. The goal is to help educate you and make you healthy. So I'm not going to explain how this got approved because it's going to take a little too long. But if you want information on this slide, it's basically a soap opera story of someone hiring someone that had no idea what they were doing and just strong-arming them into approving it the day after Ronald Reagan became president. And someone, of course, stood to gain millions of dollars at the end of the story. Before I let you go, whoever brought you this film or gave you this film cares about you. So please get in touch with them. I would encourage you to do two things. Have them get you in our group so we can give you more information that can help the body process these toxins. We've had such success. And also this 9-day detox nutritional film set. It's an amazing link. It's on your website, 9daydetox.net. It has a ton of films. I want to recommend at least 3 of them, and then I'll let you go. Of course, you can ask any questions you want, and I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you feel like you learned something today that was, and I'd love to know what you liked best about it. But these nutritional films are all on 9daydetox.net. At the bottom of our, if you scroll down, it'll say nutritional films, and it basically will give you 6 different ones that we love. They're nothing to do with our nutritional program, but they're everything to do with our nutritional program. They're independent films, but they're incredibly educational. Genetic Roulette is the first one. Food Inc. is the other one that I mentioned. Sweet Misery is extraordinarily informative. And one that I just, Vaccine Nation, Monique, you got to read this one. This is important. And also the Fashion Factories. Now, you wouldn't think that fashion has much to do with sustainability, but it's really opened my eyes, and it's all connected. So anyway, this is great bedtime stuff, and I really recommend that you guys check these out. I'm going to unmute you. I just love you guys so much. So let me unmute. Do this. All right.
Were you recording?
I was, yeah. I think so. I don't know. Maybe not. Oh, no, I wasn't.